What I've learnt about building something bigger, even when you don't understand it, I just wanted to sit down with you today and make this video because I've been thinking a lot lately what it really takes to build something different, especially when people around you don't always understand what you're doing. And I think this really matters because so many women feel this quite pull for more freedom, more peace and more breathing room, really, more time with your family. And they want to have more purpose in their lives. They want to have more revenue in a way that doesn't leave them exhausted all the time. And yet, even when that desire is there, so many of us just still hesitate, don't we? We second guess ourselves. We worry about what people think of us. We question whether we're allowed to do or want to do more. And sometimes we talk ourselves out of the very thing that will change our lives. And isn't that sad? So I just wanted to have a really honest chat with you today about that. Not from a place of perfection. We're not perfectionists. And not from a place of having it all figured out either. But from my heart. Because I know what it feels like to want a better life for your family. I know what it feels like to want more space, more choice, more support and more hope for the future. I also know what it feels like when your vision is bigger than what the people around you can see it currently is. And that feels lonely at times, doesn't it? One thing I've learned is this. Just because others do not understand your path, that does not mean it's the wrong path. Sometimes it simply means they haven't seen what you can see yet. That's all it means. And I think that is such an important thing to remember. Because if you are someone who wants to build a business, create another stream of revenue, learn new skills, show up online, help more people, or do something outside the usual path, you'll be very likely misunderstood at some point or another in your life. People, you may question whether you may have some doubt, the project you're doing, your own fears, or you might think it sounds unrealistic. Or others might tell you to be careful. They may think you've changed. But often what's really happening is this. Your courage is confronting their comfort. And not everyone knows what to do with that. They really don't. So if you're in a time where you feel pulled towards more, but you're also feeling the weight of other people's opinions, I want to remind you gently that you do not need to take everyone else's approval to move forward in your life. You really don't. You need wisdom, you need discernment, you need honesty, you need integrity. But you do not need the universal approval of friends and family and everything. And I think sometimes as women, especially, if we care deeply, we can spend far too long trying to make sure everyone else is comfortable with our decisions before we make them. But if you do that, you can stay stuck for years and just not get any further on. And I don't say that harshly. I say it with so much compassion for you. Because I think many women have dreams sitting quietly in their hearts that have been just delayed, not because they're incapable, but because they've been waiting for permission. Permission from your family, from your friends, from society, from people who are not even living the kind of life themselves that they desire. And there comes a point where you have to lovingly say to your friends, I'm grateful for your opinions, but I cannot build my life around other people's limitations. So that's really a huge thing to say. Another thing I've been reflecting on is how often we are taught that working harder is the only way to create more. And so for many women, that belief has become exhausting. Work more hours, take more on, carry more, push through more, keep proving yourself. And yes, hard work has its place. Of course it does. But I think many of us reach a point where we no longer are interested in building a life that only looks good from the outside, whilst feeling drained on the inside. We want something sustainable. We want to create income in a way that supports our life, not consumes it. We want to be present with our children and our families, present with our husbands and our partners, a way to use social media well, a way to build online, a way to learn digital skills, and a way to create reoccurring revenue streams, a way to stop starting from scratch every single month. Because when everything relies completely on your time, your energy, your constant output, that creates pressure, and pressure over time can turn into burnout. It really can, and overwhelm. So one of the biggest mindset shifts for me has been realising that building something more spacious is not lazy, it's wise building, something that gives your family more options, and it's definitely not selfish. It is a loving, learning new skill. It's not silly, it's a smart way to go, a smart way to think. Trying something different does not mean you've lost your way. It may mean you're just finally listening to the deeper part of yourself that knows you are made for more. And I want to say something else that I think is very important, and that's growth. It often begins the moment you stop assuming that way. You've always done things. It's the only way. That one thought alone can change so much. Because the truth is, new results usually require new thinking. If you want a different life, at some point you need to do different habits, have different beliefs, different decisions, a different environment, and sometimes different people around you too. Actually, it usually is uncomfortable because growth rarely feels neat and tidy when you're in the middle of it, does it? Not, it really doesn't. Sometimes growth looks like uncertainty. Sometimes it looks like being the first one in your circle to do something different. Sometimes it looks a little bit wobbly, but you don't want to quit. Sometimes it just looks like posting the video anyway. Sometimes it looks like you're saying that you're committed even when results are slower than you've hoped for. And I think that is where real leadership is built. Not when everything is easy, not when everyone is clapping you, not when success feels obvious, but when you keep showing up with integrity, with consistency and with faith, even when the evidence is not all there yet. That is powerful. I also want to talk about comparison for a moment, because that came up so strongly in the material we've shared. There's always going to be people ahead of us, people doing better things, people getting faster results, people who seem more confident and more visible, more established. And we have a choice in how we respond to that. We can be intimidated or we can be expanded. We can let someone else's success make us shrink, or we can let it remind us it is possible. And I really do believe that it is a choice, because if one woman can build something beautiful from scratch, and if one woman can create more time, freedom, and if one woman can learn new skills later on in life, and if one woman can rebuild after burnout, stress, disappointment or fear, then that becomes evidence that change is possible. You've got a new way of thinking. It's not guaranteed exactly how you want it to do, and it's not overnight, and it's not without a bit of effort, but it is possible. All a woman needs to begin. I think that's why community matters so much. Who you are around matters. Who speaks into your life matters. Who celebrates your growth matters. Your growth also matters. And the truth is, not everyone can go with you into the next session, next thing that you're doing. Some people like the vision of what stays really small, the version that stays familiar, and the version that doesn't challenge the way they're living. But that doesn't really grow you. But as you grow, your standards grow, your boundaries grow, your discernment grows. And that is not something to feel guilty about. That is maturity. If you're serious about building a better life for you, the people you love around you, you can hold that vision within you. People are not threatened by your becoming who you are, or cheer you on, or people who understand. It's not a personal attack. If you don't currently have that around you, sometimes you have to intentionally place yourself into communities and spaces where that kind of thinking exists, because proximity changes things. It really does. The more time you spend around women who believe growth is possible, the more normal it becomes. The more time you spend around women who take action, the more you start to take action yourself. The more time you spend around women who are building with honesty, purpose and consistency, the more you realise that success is not just about hype. It's about commitment. It's about, that brings me to another huge lesson. Most people give up far too soon, not because they're not capable, not because they never have worked, but because they expected quick proof. And when that quick proof doesn't come, they stopped. But so much of building anything worthwhile is about staying the course long enough for it to grow and build roots down. That is true business. That is the true healing. It's a true confidence. It's a true leadership. You often don't see the full fruit of something that in the moment that you plant it. There's usually when you plant things, it takes time, doesn't it, to come to fruition and get the plant. Sometimes it's a season where it looks slow, a season where you wonder where anything is happening at all. And those are moments that test you. Those are moments that reveal whether you are building from emotion or from devotion. Because if you're only in it when it feels exciting, you will keep stopping and starting. But if you're anchored in the deeper reason for your family, calling and values and future, and your desire to help other people and other women, your wish to create more breathing room in life, then you can stay steady even when peace feels slower than you hoped. And I think that is one of the biggest differences between women who eventually create something meaningful and women who stay stuck, is to stay stuck. The women who create something meaningful do not always have the most confidence at the start. They're not always loudest. They're not always the most polished. They're not always the ones who have a perfect strategy. Usually, and very often, they're simply the ones who have stayed the course. You've stayed teachable, consistent, honest, willing and anchored. And over time that becomes powerful. I also want to say this because I think this matters so, so much. You do not have to become someone fake to become someone successful. You do not need to be louder than anyone else. You do not need to copy someone else's tone. You do not need to perform confidence every minute of the day. And you do not need to build life that looks impressive, that feels empty. You're allowed to build in a way that feels aligned with what you stand for and who you are. You're allowed to be warm. You're allowed to be gentle. You're allowed to be thoughtful. And you're definitely allowed to care deeply. And you're allowed to be faith-filled. You're allowed to build from the sincerity and from the genuine desire to make life better for other people. In fact, I think that kind of leadership is deeply needed right now. The world does not need more noise. It needs more heart. It needs more women who are willing to rise without losing themselves. Women who can both be ambitious and kind. Women that can build nature and nurture. Women who can lead and listen. Women who can grow and still remain grounded in what matters most. And maybe that is you. Maybe you have been underestimating what is possible for you and your life because you have been measuring yourself against others. And maybe your next step is not to become somebody else. Maybe it's simply to trust what already has been stirring inside you, to stop dismissing your desire for more, to stop shrinking around people who are committed to staying the same, to stop talking about yourself at the very thing that keeps tugging at your heart. Maybe your next step is to simply want to say brave, yes, this is me. Yes to learning, showing up. Yes to trying. Yes to trusting in God a little more. And yes to backing yourself. And believing that your life does not have to stay exactly the same. Because sometimes it really begins not with having the whole map, not with a zero fear, not with perfect timing, just with one honest yes. And if you're listening to this today and you feel like you've been in that part between place and wanting more and hesitating, I just want to encourage you. So please do not count yourself out too early. Do not fear make your decisions. Do not let other people's uncertainty become your ceiling. Do not let this time convince you that nothing is working. Because it is working. Everything is working. And do not assume that because the journey feels stretched, it must be wrong. Sometimes stretching is exactly what growth feels. And sometimes the version of you that you're becoming will look back on the season and be grateful that you did not quit. You should be grateful that you kept going, so grateful that you stayed open. So grateful that you were brave enough to believe in life that could hold more peace, more freedom, more just more provision, more joy, more purpose, and more impact in your life. Not because life is suddenly perfect, but because you stopped handing your power away and started building with purpose and intention. And that is what I want for the women in the world today. So if anything resonated with you today in this video, please subscribe to my membership and I'll get back to you with any questions you may have.